today, Banfield found guilty in the aggravated murder of Christine Banfield, his wife, as well as Joseph Ryan. And we have this from X. It says a jury in Fairfax, Virginia today convicted a former IRS criminal investigator of murdering his wife and a man who prosecutors say he lured to their home through a sex fetish website. Brendan Banfield was found guilty on all counts, including 2 counts of aggravated murder. And this is the verdict as it came in today.
We find you guilty of aggravated murder on count 1 of 2024-666, and also count 4 of 2024-666, and count 5, commission of a felony with a firearm of 2024-666. Also on count 1 of 873 of child endangerment, I do find you guilty as found by the jury. Do you wish to have a pre-sentence investigation report, Mr. Carroll?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, I'll order a pre-sentence investigation.
That was the judge reading off that verdict today. Again, Banfield found guilty in the aggravated murder of his wife, Christine, and Joseph Ryan. So for more on this, let's bring in a criminal defense attorney, Joseph Tully. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you for having me.
So, Joseph, let's start with a little bit of the background here, because this is a kind of a complicated accusation and plot. So, Brendan Banfield accused of killing his wife, Christine, as well as that stranger named Joseph Ryan. They say that he lured that person into their home in order to set him up as a fall guy for Christine's murder. So what do we know about the background that led up to these killings and this murder plot, as said by prosecutors?
Sure. So the allegations, which have now been proven in court with this guilty verdict, are that Brendan Banfield was having an affair with his au pair, Juliana from Brazil, and rather than simply divorce his wife and live his life with his au pair lover, he decided to kill his wife because he didn't want to split custody, he didn't want to split money. And the plan was very involved. It involved creating a fake profile for his wife on FetLife, a fetish sex website regarding BDSM lifestyle. And they basically catfished another individual, Joseph Ryan, to come over to engage in a BDSM role play involving knives. And then it was set up to where the individual, Joseph Ryan, came over thinking that he was going to participate in this FetLife sexual fetish fantasy. And he was shot and killed. And the wife was stabbed by Brendan Banfield to have an alibi for this crime. So that's basically what the Commonwealth's theory was at trial. And again, with the jury's guilty verdicts, we can say that that was shown to be proven in court beyond a reasonable doubt.
And what we're looking at right now is the mug shots of Brendan Banfield along with that au pair. The au pair, according to prosecutors, was at the center of what they're saying was the motive for this. So prosecutors saying that Brendan wanted to leave his wife for the au pair who he was having an affair with, as you mentioned. The au pair actually ended up taking a plea deal, became the prosecution's star witness here. What did she have to say in court, and how vital was her testimony in reaching this guilty verdict today?
So I would say that her testimony was very pivotal. It may not have been necessary. Some of the prosecutor at the press conference afterwards said, look, we were prepared to go to trial. We didn't need her testimony. We had filed the charges. We were going to go to trial. We believed in the case. At some point, her attorney reached out and made a proffer. And according to the prosecutors, the au pair was able to fill in some of the gaps that they didn't know, was able to provide additional detail that they did not know and that would not have had going to trial. Going to trial with somebody who's turned state's evidence, like a co-conspirator who's turned state's evidence, is always both a blessing and a curse for the prosecution. In some sense, it helps, but then in another sense, whenever you have somebody who's turned state's evidence, who's getting, and I'll call it a sweetheart deal, in exchange for providing testimony, you're always going to give the defense at least some kind of argument. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, this person isn't here because they're telling the truth. This person is here because they want to take advantage of getting a sweetheart plea bargain. And so, in some sense, it helped the prosecution. In other sense, it always creates at least one defensible issue in terms of credibility and integrity for the prosecution. But according to prosecutors, her testimony, while not necessary, was very, very important to the prosecution.
All right, thank you for that. And we also want to talk a little bit about the other evidence in this case. So aside from her testimony, there was some digital data that prosecutors were talking about, along with blood smear forensics. We're going to show you the video of some of that here. But what role did that evidence play, and how much of it was there to work with here?
Sure. So probably in order of importance, I would say the blood spatter evidence was really, really the main focus of the prosecution. In other words, in order to get out of this this alibi theory that Mr. Banfield had, that, hey, look, this guy, I got a phone call that a stranger appeared at my house. I thought my wife was having an affair. I came in, he had a knife to her throat. She was screaming. I drew my weapon and I shot him, but he had unfortunately already stabbed her and we lost her. That was his defense. And so the prosecution had to use experts to show that the blood evidence here didn't show that this was a crime where Joseph Ryan had stabbed his wife, Miss Banfield, that the scene was staged, that bodies were moved, that blood from Mrs. Banfield was, put onto Joseph Ryan purposely, and vice versa, in order to create this illusion of the defense of what Mr. Banfield had set up. So in terms of the blood evidence, I think that was probably crucial. And then second to that would be the digital forensics of who got onto this FetLife, who created the platforms, the profiles, who was soliciting these individuals as part of this scheme. And with the au pair Juliana's testimony, the prosecution was able to fill out and say, look, she's admitted to it. We have the evidence. Everything else stacks up here. This is what happened.
Let's talk a little bit more about what happened today in court. So we heard a closing arguments and then, of course, this guilty verdict. How quick did that all happen, and what did we hear for the rationale for this guilty verdict today?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so the case went to the jury last Thursday or Friday. They were out, I believe, all of Friday and part of the day today. So it wasn't a quick verdict. It wasn't a long verdict either. In my experience, jurors, when they have a very serious case, and everybody knows that, it's not supposed to be a part of juror deliberations, how long somebody's going to get in prison or what the punishment is. But everybody knows with a double homicide case that it's going to be very, very serious consequences. So it appears to me the jury did their job. They took their job seriously. They sifted through all the evidence. And at the end of it, they decided that the government had proved its case beyond a reasonable doubt. And that's why they voted guilty. I haven't seen the jurors speak yet with the press. However, I did watch the prosecution's press conference after the jurors' verdict. And I have a lot of experience in dealing with, juries and deliberations. So, basically the evidence was very, very compelling. As I looked at this case, I've been watching it from opening statement through closing argument and jury verdict. I saw that at a high level, just looking at it, look, this guy says he comes home and somebody's in the room and with his wife and they both end up dead. That sounds very fishy. The au pair who was with him is now living with him a year later, and they're living as lovers. It looks suspicious. So just at a surface level, it looked suspicious. And then as you looked into all of the details and all the minutia of the case, it also looked like a guilty verdict would be probably the only decision that the jury could make in this case. The evidence was overwhelming. It was very compelling for the prosecution.
And so what happens to the au pair now that she did cooperate and became the star witness in reaching this guilty verdict for Brendan? What is her future looking like now?
Sure. So she was offered a deal, basically, look, if you come testify and if you testify truthfully, then we will make you a deal. She was allowed to plead to manslaughter. So she didn't have to plead to murder, which usually a co-conspirator or an aider and abettor would be, even if she didn't pull a trigger or didn't do anything, she would be just as liable for murder. So she was looking at 2 counts of first-degree murder. And she was allowed to plead to a manslaughter, which carries a maximum of 10 years in prison. So the prosecution is saying it's not a sweetheart deal. I'll say it's a sweetheart deal. Now, was it necessary? Was the greater ends of justice achieved? Probably, but nonetheless, this is a sweetheart deal. So she's looking at anywhere between credit for time served and a 10-year maximum for a manslaughter charge.
And I want to ask you, we just listened to that clip of the judge reading out this verdict. I want to ask you about the child endangerment charge. Can you explain that and how that plays into this case?
Sure. So what that charge is basically prosecutors are trained to charge as many charges as they think that they can prove in trial. So here we have 2 counts of first-degree murder, and there's other charges, but because he's convicted, he's looking at life in prison without parole. So really, the child endangerment charges are of no consequence, mathematically speaking, but I think what the rationale behind charging them is that Mr. Banfield exposed his daughter to danger. So he was supposed to take his daughter away, and instead he involved her in this scheme for murder, this setup for murder, a double murder. He brought the daughter with him. He put her in the basement while he went upstairs and killed his wife, her mother, and a stranger, Joseph Ryan, who had just had the misfortune of being caught up in this scheme. So that's what it is he put his daughter in an unsafe situation. If you are going to kill 2 people, don't bring your child with you. That's basically where the state is coming from on this. Again, it doesn't have any consequence because he's doing life in prison on the murders, but they're alleging this because they want to have the prosecutorial integrity of, look, he also did something wrong to his daughter, and we want to make sure that he's charged and that he's convicted so that people know that we're taking our job seriously of protecting society and in particular children.
So again, Brendan Banfield is found guilty on all counts. That includes 2 counts of aggravated murder for his wife and that stranger, Joseph Ryan. So what can we expect in terms of his sentence? What's going on?
Sure. So I think the judge is basically locked in. The judge and defense counsel and everybody, they're doing standard pre-sentencing workup. They're doing a PSI, you might have heard it in the clip, which is a pre-sentencing investigation where a probation officer, looks at all the different combinations that a judge can do, normally speaking. Here, the judge is basically locked in and has to give life in prison without parole on the 2 murder charges. So really, it just kind of buys everybody some time. Everybody's been working hard, the judge, the defense attorneys, the prosecutors. And for the next month or so, the probation will be doing a PSI report. But essentially, it's going to say, Judge, you have to sentence this man to life in prison without parole. So that's what's going on. There's not a lot of leeway. There won't be any surprises when it comes to sentencing.
And so we're going to expect a hefty sentence for Brendan Banfield, found guilty on 2 counts of aggravated murder. Thank you so much, Joseph Tully, criminal defense attorney, for giving your input here and breaking it all down for us. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you again for having me.